Welcome to Dory Cote on Shamanism, a weekly podcast that explores one theme in shamanism throughout each month. Get comfortable, have a seat, and let's get started.
Welcome to episode 77 of my weekly podcasts. This month's topic is weather spirits. And this week, specifically, we're going to talk a bit about my weather story and how I came to this kind of work.
Dory, please let us hear your personal journey about how you did come to begin working with weather in a shamanic way.
I'm happy to share that. It's a really pretty funny kind of story. I have been studying shamanism for many years, and some dear colleagues of mine, Nan Moss and David Corbin, authored a book entitled Weather Shamanism. And they were really very, very committed and really empowered by working with the spirits of weather. And whenever they talked about it, when I was in their presence, because I attended drumming circles with them and what have you, I always felt like, oh, really, weather? I don't know. Why are, what's the big deal here? I don't get it. Why are we talking about weather spirits? This doesn't resonate with me. And it took me some while to unpack what that was about. In fact, several years, because I was really kind of turned off by the whole idea of working with the spirits of weather. And I couldn't really understand why. And then one day, I recognized that it really all had to do with my own personal family history, in that my mother was a very disconnected, unaffectionate person who was not really bonded to other humans. She just never bonded with anybody. She was pretty detached from life. And yet, the only thing she ever really cared about, that she was, I would say, passionate about, was weather. And so her conversations were often about her diary entries and arguments between her and my dad about what day last winter there was a great big storm. And then she would pull out her diary and they would have arguments about when the big storm was and how many inches of snow we got. And of course, my mother always won these arguments because she had this diary she kept every day of the temperature and the weather and all of that. And so I decided, okay, now that I've uncovered what the root block is in me, it's time for me to, go to an introductory workshop on weather shamanism. And so I did that, and I began studying weather shamanism. And what took me deeper into it was my mother's death, actually. My mother died in the early morning hours of the 4th of July about 11 years ago. I think maybe 12 years ago now. And she had some difficulty passing. She didn't quite trust, that she was really going to go somewhere, despite the fact that she was very much Catholic and believed in Jesus and heaven and all of that. And so she was in and out of consciousness in the last few hours of her life. And I won't bore the listener with the whole story, but let it suffice to say that at the very end of her life, the last thing she said, as a huge thunderstorm came into town, there was thunder and lightning everywhere, my mother's last words were, "I love weather." And that stopped me in my tracks. And I realized in that moment that there really was something that she was passionate about. And it was about weather. And I didn't understand it. It really never resonated with me. It seemed like foolishness that she kept this, intense diary of weather. So then I really began to immerse myself in, well, what is this attraction to weather and the spirits of weather, and how can I connect in a deeper way that will enhance my advancement in, in shamanic practice, and also benefit others, but particularly benefit the earth and all of her beings. And so that's really how I came into really throwing myself into the study of weather shamanism with my dear friends Nan and David, and then have since, been in many drumming circles where we do specifically work with the spirits of weather, and I have since taught weather shamanism myself to my students. So that's how I came upon this, and it's interesting to me that when we talk about weather shamanism, people often have those question marks in their eyes, like, what are you talking about, weather shamanism? What does that mean? And so that's what's prompted me to want to do this month's podcast on, well, what is weather shamanism, and what are we talking about here? Do the weather have spirits or what? So that's where I'm going with this month's topic.
Thank you. So, can you tell us about weather circles and how participating in weather circles has changed your relationship with weather?
Yes. So as I said, I studied with Nan and David for many years and participated in a multiple year weather practicum where we really focused our attention in a circle to the study of weather spirits. And it took me to a deep, deep place that I never imagined I would go. To summarize, what I have gotten out of this is the recognition that we have a very reciprocal relationship with weather. That weather isn't something that just happens to us, that we are a part of what's happening with weather, and that weather systems or individual components of weather, like the rain or the mist or the wind, the breeze, the snow, the sun, all of those components that make up the weather that we are a part of, we're not separate from it. They all those components of weather have a spirit. They have a means through which we can communicate with them, and they are often a reflection of our own reality if we are brave enough to allow ourselves to go deeper into the spirit of the rain, for instance, and get a sense of how does this rain reflect what's happening with me right this moment, and how can I dance with the rain and make peace with rain rather than moaning and groaning about the fact that it is raining. And that's really the big takeaway from all of these years of practicing weather. It truly is about making peace with whatever is happening in any moment with weather, and not demonizing it, not aggrandizing it, not giving it a personality, and being with it and celebrating its presence, because every aspect of weather is a necessity for the ongoingness of the earth's well-being. And so, for instance, people love to talk about the weather. I'm sure you've noticed that, and the listeners know that. You're standing in line at the bank or the grocery store or whatever. Somebody wants to always say, oh, it's a lovely day. Or, oh my, what a terrible day. It's raining. It's been raining for 3 days now. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And rather than recognizing, well, rain is a good thing. Just ask the people who are living in drought conditions right now whether rain is a good thing or not. And despite the fact that rain might be an inconvenience, it actually is a blessing on us and on the earth. And so in terms of how I live my life, it's made me much more aware of accepting whatever the weather is in this moment and being at peace with it and thanking it for coming, thanking the weather for being what it is in the moment, and being willing to open myself fully to whatever is.
I can see the weather being a reflection of the collective.
Mm-hmm.
And many of us have had the experience of lying on the beach and looking at clouds and using your thoughts to break them up,
Mm-hmm.
or to pull them together.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to happen magically.
Mm-hmm.
So on a small level with clouds, I can connect
Mm-hmm.
weather to me, but it's a bigger leap to think about my relationship to a storm,
Mm-hmm.
or to some of the more powerful weather spirits.
Mm-hmm. Well, truly, what I would want to say about that is that the weather is a means by which we can explore our own inner reality. For instance, if you're in the presence of, let's say, a big northeaster snowstorm here in where I live in Maine, and you bemoan the fact that it's snowing and blowing and you're going to have to shovel and all of that, then you're really keeping yourself separate from what is happening. But if you allow yourself to emotionally go into the storm, experience the wind, experience the driving snow, experience the cold. You don't have to even be outside with it. Just allow yourself to go to that place in your inner self and allow a teaching to come to you about that. Allow the blessing of the wind. Allow the blessing of the bone cold. Allow the blessing of those gorgeous snowflakes. And see what is it that's blowing inside of you? What is it that's storming inside of you? What is it that is really cold and chilly inside of you? How can you align yourself with the energy of the storm for a period of time? And rather than pushing against it, merge with it, become one with that energy for a bit.
Thank you. Has this relationship with weather changed your life in any ways that you are willing to share?
Yes, absolutely. It's changed my life dramatically, actually, because you can imagine I had a pretty negative attitude about focusing on weather a whole lot because of my mother's disconnection to humans and her rampant connection to weather and obsession with weather, really. So at this point, my relationship with weather is one in which I'm truly at peace with whatever is happening. And I don't bemoan whatever is happening. If it's a rainy, windy, cold day, then that is what is. And I embrace it rather than bemoan it or demonize it or try to change it in any way. It's not for me to try to change what is, but rather to be with what is and absorb it into my being and greet it with joy. And the other piece is, and I will talk about this more in the next episode, but communicating with what weather is here and observing how that element of weather is willing to meet me and communicate with me and respond to me as I respond to it. It's like, again, the art of paying attention. When we pay attention to something, we enliven our relationship with it. And so by paying attention to what is, rather than cursing it or bemoaning it or complaining about it, we enliven that relationship, and then it becomes really powerfully meaningful. That's, I'd say, the major change that has happened for me.
That harmony.
It's about being in harmony, yes, being in alignment.
This completes our prepared questions for this segment on your weather story. Is there anything else you'd like to add at this time?
Only this. I am sitting here recording this podcast and I'm looking outside at a window, through a window where I'm seeing my maple trees blowing in the wind, and the leaves are somewhat brown and getting ready to fall onto the ground. And I love watching it. I'm not sad that the leaves are falling. I'm watching the dance of the wind through the trees, and that to me is an enormous gift. And I'm looking forward to next week's podcast where we delve a little bit more deeply in, who are the weather spirits?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Dory Cote on shamanism. We'd love to hear your thoughts, stories, reactions, and questions. Come on over to dorycote.com and join the conversation. And tune in next week for more on this subject, or next month for a new subject. You can subscribe to this podcast in iTunes or sign up on dorycote.com to receive notices when the podcasts are posted. That's Dory, D-O-R-Y, and Cote, C-O-T-E.com. Drumming and rattling by Dory Cote and Terry Morgan. Technical assistance and audio production by JillHackett.com. And this is Susan Savelle, wishing you many blessings in your life. We hope to have you join us next time.